Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have used an old pillowcase to create a matching pyjama set. I feel like you can never have too many pairs of pyjamas, so I thought I'd have a go at making my own. So let's get into it. First, I cut along all the seams of the pillowcase to have two pieces of fabric. I used a seam ripper to do this, but scissors are fine. I started by making the top. Taking one piece of the pillowcase, I folded this in half and made sure everything was laying flat. Next, I used the top I liked the fit of as a template for my new top. I laid the top out flat and drew around it, adding ½ inch for seam allowance. I then cut along the lines I had just drawn. I also cut along the folded edge, so I had two separate pieces, a front piece and a back piece. I decided to remove these pieces on the back piece of the top, so it would look like this. I drew a straight line across the back piece, level with the bottom of the armholes. I then cut along this line, making sure I was only cutting through the back piece. This is how it looked. With the front and back pieces right sides together, I pinned down both sides. Once everything was pinned in place, I sewed where I'd pinned. These would be my new side seams. This is how it looked once it was sewn. I then needed to hem all the raw edges. I did this by folding them down ½ inch and pinning them in place. I then sewed where I'd pinned. Next, I made the straps. While trying the top on, I measured over my shoulders and worked out how long I needed the straps to be. My measurement was 16 inches, but I added an inch for seam allowance, so my new measurement was 17 inches. As I wouldn't have enough fabric left for my pillowcase once I'd made the shorts, I used some fabric from an old bedsheet I had. I cut out two pieces that were 17 inches long and 2 inches wide. I folded these in half, right sides together, and pinned along the long edges. I then sewed where I'd pinned. I then turned these inside out so they were now the right way round. I used a safety pin to help me do this. I could now attach the straps to my top. With the top inside out, I placed one end of one strap ½ inch from the edge and pinned this in place. I repeated this with the second strap. I turned the top over and repeated this on the back of the top. I then sewed these in place. I had some lace that my nan had given me and I thought it would look nice around the bottom of the top. I measured around the bottom edge to see how much lace I would need. This measurement was 34 inches. I then added ½ inch for seam allowance. I cut a piece of lace that was 34½ inches long and also cut it so it was half the original width, which was 3 inches. I folded this in half, right sides together, and sewed down the short edge, creating a loop. With the seam of the lace lining up with one of the side seams of the top, I placed the top inside the lace, right sides together, and pinned the bottom edge of the lace to the bottom edge of the top. Once I'd done this all the way around the bottom edge, I sewed where I'd pinned. The top was finished and I could now work on the shorts. Taking the second side of the pillowcase, I folded this in half and cut along the folded edge, so I had two pieces. Using one of these pieces, I folded it in half and made sure it was laying flat. I then used a pair of shorts that I liked the fit of and used this as a template to make my new shorts. I placed these onto my fabric with the bottom edge of the shorts lined up with the bottom edge of the fabric. I also folded the waistband down as I would be making one separately later. I drew around the shorts, adding ½ inch for seam allowance. I then cut along the lines I had just drawn. And also cut along the folded edge, so I had two pieces. This is how they looked. I then repeated this with the second piece. I now had 4 pieces, 2 to make the front piece and 2 to make the back piece of my shorts. Taking 2 of these pieces, I placed them right sides together and pinned along the curved edge. I repeated this with the other 2 pieces, then sewed where I'd pinned. I now had 1 front piece and 1 back piece. Next, I placed these 2 pieces right sides together and pinned down the sides and the crotch to make the leg holes, making sure the seams on the front and the back lined up. I then sewed where I'd pinned. On to making the waistband. I measured around the top of the shorts. This measurement was 40 inches. Using the bedsheet I used to make the straps, I cut out a piece of fabric that was 41 inches long, adding ½ inch for seam allowance, and 5 inches wide. This would be folded in half, so the waistband will be 2½ inches wide. I folded this in half and pinned along the short edge. I then sewed this in place to create a loop. Once sewn, I folded this in half so the right side of the fabric was on the outside. Next, I attached the waistband to the shorts. With the seam of the waistband lining up with the back seam of the shorts, I placed the waistband over the shorts and made sure the open edge of the waistband was at the top. I then pinned the waistband in place all the way around the top of the shorts. I then sewed the waistband in place. This is how it looked. As the waist of the shorts was a bit big, I added a drawstring so I could tie them as tight or as loose as I wanted. To do this, I laid the shorts out flat and found the midpoint of the waistband on the front of the shorts. From the midpoint, I measured and marked ½ inch on both sides. I then pinched the waistband and cut a small hole over the mark I had made, making sure I was only cutting through one layer of the waistband. Next, I added the drawstring. I had this cord from an old jacket and thought it would be good to use as a drawstring. I attached one end of the cord to a safety pin and fed it around the waistband through one of the holes I had just cut. Once I'd fed it all the way around the waistband, I cut the two ends of cord to the same length and tied a knot in each end. This is how they looked. I then wanted to add some lace to the bottom of each leg. I measured around the bottom of each leg. This measurement was 29 inches. I cut a piece of lace that was 29 inches long and again cut it so it was half the original width. This was 3 inches. I placed the lace onto the shorts right sides together with the bottom edge of the lace lined up with the bottom edge of the shorts. I pinned this in place all the way around the leg hole. I then repeated this on the second leg. Once everything was pinned in place, I sewed where I'd pinned. The pyjamas were now complete and this is how they looked. I was really pleased with how they turned out. They are really comfortable and it's almost impossible to know they started off as a pillowcase. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next video.